And again, you and Paul got together to evaluate in a number of areas, but the Brent Pry hiring. So in a nutshell, what was your initial response? And now that you've had a couple of weeks to let it soak in, and based on what your expectations of what that job should bring, and what is the fan base's response? Because typically there's this thought that, okay, we got to bring in somebody we known as a known commodity that's been the head coach somewhere where we can see a record next to their name.
Yeah. The one other thing I try to caution with fans is, like, just because you're not too familiar and he's not in the top 5 list of names that some website put up, doesn't mean he's not any good, right?
Yep.
So I think that's what we were running into with Brent Pry. You know, some fans were like, "Oh, he's not Matt Campbell," which sounds outrageous that Virginia Tech would be able to pluck Matt Campbell away from Iowa State, but that was a pretty hefty rumor on the message boards a couple of days before Brent Pry was hired. You know, oh, that's not Charles Huff, the first-year head coach at Marshall. Like, who are we hiring? That's not Luke Fickell. That's not, I mean, just name a guy from a list. You know, that's not Billy Napier. It's like, no, it's not. It's Brent Pry, a guy who played high school football and college football, you know, in and around the state of Virginia, a guy who worked at Virginia Tech under Frank Beamer and Bud Foster, a guy who's had a ton of success as a recruiter in the state of Virginia when he was at Penn State, you know, plucking kids out of Northern Virginia, another school that's had a lot of success in Virginia that shouldn't be having as much success as they are, right? So you think about that. He's a Virginia Tech guy, right? He's a cultural fit. You know, when you watch the introductory press conference, the two things that are different, or the one thing that's clearly different between the two guys, Fuente and Brent Pry, is that Brent Pry understands Virginia Tech coming in much better than Justin Fuente did, right? For Fuente, it was, okay, this is my first big job. For Brent Pry, it's like, okay, I have coached here before. It was 25 years ago, but I've coached here before. This is where I got my start in coaching. The place means a lot to him because of that, right? So the cultural fit is huge. The understanding of recruitment is huge, and building and bettering the culture is important. It's been clear, and again, it's all about wins and losses at the end of the day, Mark, but he's checking a lot of boxes from vanity boxes, so to speak, right, that a head coach has outside of X's and O's and on-field production. He's checking the boxes of reaching out to the fan base. He's checking the boxes of, being more open to the media. You know, Virginia Tech's video team has been putting out, incredible recruiting videos and reactions to guys signing. Virginia Tech offered an offensive tackle yesterday that was a teammate of their top signee, Gunnar Givens, a kid who's a 3-star who Justin Fuente had on his radar, had him as a preferred walk-on. And Hunter McLean was his name, from Lord Botetourt High School. And McLean had committed verbally to Richmond. Pretty good program at the FCS level. And Brent Pry called him yesterday morning, the morning of National Signing Day, and told him they were offering a full scholarship. So he flipped his commitment to the Hokies. And the Virginia Tech media team recorded that call and put it on social media. And it sounds silly, but Virginia Tech was not doing that under Justin Fuente. And that's something that the fan base, reaching out to the fan base and understanding that part of it is important. So Brent Pry gets all that. I like it more and more every day. There were guys that were rumored to be potential hires that, we had questions about. Brent Pry certainly had not being a head coach before. That's something that is inherent. That's a question, right? How is he going to handle being the head guy? But, being able to retain a lot of these top recruits and being able to flip a few guys in state. And he's had a really good opening 3 weeks as Virginia Tech's head coach.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it. I know what it takes to evaluate a coach coming in and building a program, but Virginia Tech from a cultural standpoint, from a functional standpoint.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it's been a good hire. And the first indication from the metrics is, wow, the 30th ranked class in the country, considering he comes in 2 weeks prior to National Signing Day, and the 4th rated class in the conference.
And he lost 2 4-stars, or a 4-star and a high 3-star yesterday. But then he flips 2 3-stars, and they got another 3-star in Xavier Bradshaw on their radar. And there's just this just feels a bit different, Mark. Like the last few recruiting classes have not been very good for Virginia Tech under Justin Fuente, like inexcusably bad for the school that Virginia Tech is. Virginia Tech under Frank Beamer, I mean, never had worse than a top 30 class. I mean, they were consistently in the top 30. And for Justin Fuente to have like the 76th rated recruiting class for 2020, and then for 2021 to have a class in the 40s, it's like, okay, that was an improvement, but like Virginia Tech should have never fallen to that, because even with Beamer, like the last few years of Beamer were not very good. Like last 4 years, they were averaging 7.5 wins per year under Frank Beamer. So it's not like the production on the field was great, right? But the one thing we can say during that time is they were still recruiting pretty well. They were still recruiting Virginia well. They were still putting out top 30 classes, which is pretty reasonable at Virginia Tech. And it's reasonable that given the talent in Virginia that we mentioned, Virginia Tech could be better than that, right? They have not done it, Mark. They've never put out a top 20 class, right, in the modern rankings era. But I think that's reasonable to expect given the talent in Virginia. I don't think it's an unreasonable ask to say, can Virginia Tech put out top 20 recruiting classes? North Carolina's doing it. Virginia Tech, from a football standpoint and a resources standpoint, they have everything they need to compete against North Carolina, right? There's no reason why Virginia Tech can't make a similar jump that North Carolina made. So I think that's the ask here. It's, can they improve recruiting, and can they improve player development and on-field production, because they kind of lost their way in both regards as a football program under Justin Fuente.
With the talent in the state and with the talent in the region, the DMV, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, it's a good region for football talent.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. So we'll have to see what happens.